if Shedeur sitting on the front row or not. If he said, I got sources saying this kid don't study, this kid's in the back of the room, then you say something. You say something. But don't just say those things because you want to sound bite and you want to go viral and talk about what this kid's not doing. I mean, Rex, you allow.
What's up, everyone? Before we dive into the absolute chaos brewing in Cleveland, I need a quick favor. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and every single click helps us grow. If you love deep dive NFL drama, hit that subscribe button right now. It means the world. Let's get this channel built together. The Cleveland Browns organization is spiraling into absolute chaos, and what's unfolding right now is the kind of drama that makes for must-watch television. We're witnessing a franchise quarterback controversy that has reached a boiling point, and at the center of it all is Shedeur Sanders, the son of NFL legend Deion Sanders, who just sent a message so bold, so defiant, and so public that it has completely shattered whatever relationship he had left with head coach Kevin Stefanski. This is not your typical behind-the-scenes tension that gets swept under the rug. This is out in the open, playing out on social media for the entire world to see, and the implications are absolutely massive for everyone involved. Let me set the stage for you, because what's happened to Shedeur Sanders since entering the NFL is nothing short of a complete and total nightmare. This is a young man who was projected by virtually every analyst, every mock draft, and every expert to be a first-round selection. We're talking about a quarterback who dominated at Colorado, who showed poise under pressure, who demonstrated NFL-level arm talent and decision-making, and who was widely expected to be the second quarterback selected in the draft, behind only Cam Ward. The expectations were sky high. The future looked incredibly bright, and Shedeur Sanders was preparing to walk into an NFL organization as a Week 1 starting quarterback with a massive contract and the keys to a franchise. But then draft night happened, and everything went completely off the rails in the most devastating way possible. Instead of hearing his name called in the first round as everyone anticipated, Shedeur Sanders watched in what must have been absolute agony as 5 different quarterbacks got selected ahead of him. 5 quarterbacks. Think about the psychological toll that takes on a player who has every reason to believe he's one of the elite prospects in the draft class. One by one, quarterbacks went off the board, teams made their selections, and Shedeur Sanders kept waiting, kept hoping, and kept wondering what was happening. The first round came and went without his name being called. The second round passed. The third round disappeared. And finally, mercifully, in the 5th round, the Cleveland Browns selected Shedeur Sanders with the 144th overall pick. That's not just a fall from grace. That's a free fall of epic proportions. From projected first rounder and potential franchise cornerstone to a 5th round selection is the kind of draft day collapse that can absolutely devastate a young player's confidence and career trajectory. The financial implications alone are staggering. First-round picks get guaranteed multi-million-dollar contracts with significant signing bonuses, sometimes tens of millions of dollars fully guaranteed before they ever take a snap. They get the red carpet treatment. They are the face of the franchise. 5th-round picks get comparative pocket change with minimal guarantees and far less job security. They are, by definition, viewed as developmental projects, lottery tickets, or simply camp bodies to fill out a roster. The financial disrespect is one thing, but the organizational disrespect is another. Beyond the money, there's the organizational commitment. First-round quarterbacks are given every opportunity to succeed. They are surrounded with weapons, protected by coaching staffs who have invested their reputations in the selection and given years to develop. The playbook is tailored to their strengths. The media is told to be patient. They are, for all intents and purposes, untouchable for at least a season or 2. 5th-round quarterbacks are typically viewed as depth pieces, clipboard holders, and potential trade fodder. They get leftover reps in practice. They are expected to know the whole playbook, but never get the first-team reps to actually master it. They are given no leash, no investment, and no real path to starting unless a catastrophe happens. When Shedeur Sanders arrived at Cleveland Browns training camp, the disrespect and lack of opportunity only continued. He entered camp as the 4th quarterback on the depth chart. 4th, not competing for the starting job, not even positioned as the primary backup. He was buried so deep on the depth chart that his chances of seeing meaningful playing time seemed virtually non-existent unless multiple injuries occurred ahead of him. For a player with Shedeur Sanders' pedigree, his talent level, his college production, and his own internal expectations, being the 4th string quarterback quarterback is an absolute slap in the face and a clear indication that the organization had no immediate plans to utilize him in any meaningful capacity. It was a message. You are not our guy. You are not even the guy behind our guy. Fast forward to the present day, and Shedeur Sanders has now moved up to backup quarterback, but only after the team traded away the veteran in front of him. He still hasn't taken a single snap in a regular season NFL game. His entire professional career consists of practice reps, scout teamwork, and watching from the sidelines while the team struggles mightily at the quarterback position. And here's where it gets even more frustrating for Sanders and everyone watching the situation unfold. In the Browns' most recent game against the New England Patriots, Shedeur Sanders wasn't even active. He was a healthy scratch due to a back injury that was conveniently diagnosed the day before the game. Now, I'm not saying the injury isn't real, but the timing is certainly suspicious and raises questions about whether the organization is actively trying to prevent Sanders from getting any opportunity whatsoever, perhaps to protect their other rookie quarterback. The current starting quarterback situation in Cleveland has become absolutely unsustainable, and even the most ardent supporters of the coaching staff are running out of patience and excuses. Dillon Gabriel, the third-round pick who beat out Sanders for the starting job, has been nothing short of disastrous since taking over as the starter in Week 5. With the exception of a somewhat decent debut against the Minnesota Vikings, Gabriel's performances have been dreadful. He has shown zero progress, makes crucial mistakes at the worst possible times, and is actively hurting the team's chances of winning football games. In that last game against the Patriots, Dillon Gabriel threw two absolutely devastating interceptions that essentially sealed the Browns' fate and reignited the social media firestorm calling for Kevin Stefanski to make a quarterback change. These weren't just unfortunate throws or balls that got tipped at the line of scrimmage. These were decision-making errors, poor reads, and the kind of fundamental mistakes that make you question whether a quarterback has the mental processing speed necessary to succeed at the NFL level. These were the kinds of interceptions that leave a stadium silent, that make teammates on the sideline shake their heads, and that get coordinators fired. Gabriel currently holds a 1-3 record as a starter, and that lone victory came largely due to factors that had very little to do with his actual quarterback play. The defense forced turnovers, the running game controlled time of possession, and Gabriel essentially just had to not lose the game rather than actually win it. In his other starts, he has looked lost, overwhelmed, and completely incapable of providing the spark this offense desperately needs. The fan base has reached its breaking point. The media is openly questioning the coaching decisions, and analysts across the league are wondering why Kevin Stefanski continues to stubbornly stick with Dillon Gabriel when it's painfully obvious that a change is desperately needed. And apparently Shedeur Sanders himself has finally had enough of sitting quietly on the sidelines while this disaster plays out in front of him. This is where things get absolutely explosive. This is the hook. This is where Sanders made the decision that has now completely fractured his relationship with the coaching staff. A fan account on Instagram posted a message calling for Shedeur Sanders to be named the starter for the Browns' upcoming game against the New York Jets following their bye week. It was the kind of post that fans make all the time, advocating for their preferred player, expressing frustration with the current situation, and demanding change. It's the background noise of any losing NFL season. What made this particular post different and what turned it into a massive story is that Shedeur Sanders himself liked the post. He publicly, deliberately, and defiantly liked a social media post calling for him to replace the current starter. Let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't a private conversation. This wasn't a comment made off the record to a reporter. This was a public endorsement of a message undermining the starting quarterback and openly campaigning for his job. In the world of professional football, where hierarchy, respect for the depth chart, and supporting your teammates publicly are considered sacred, what Sanders did is viewed as absolutely nuclear. It's a direct challenge to the head coach. It's a public expression of frustration with his situation. It's a clear signal that Sanders believes he deserves to be starting and that continuing to start Dillon Gabriel is organizational malpractice. This is not the action of a player who's patiently waiting his turn and trusting the process. This is the action of a player who has completely lost faith in the coaching staff, who no longer believes he'll get a fair opportunity through traditional channels, and who has decided to take his case directly to the court of public opinion. The relationship between Shedeur Sanders and Kevin Stefanski, which was likely already strained given Sanders' draft fall, his lack of opportunities, and his continued demotion on the depth chart, is now reportedly completely broken beyond repair. When a player publicly undermines the coaching staff's decisions, when he openly campaigns for another other player's job through social media, and when he makes it clear that he disagrees with the organizational direction, there's really no coming back from that. The trust is shattered, the respect is gone, and any pretense of a functional working relationship has been destroyed. From Kevin Stefanski's perspective, this Instagram like is an act of insubordination that cannot be tolerated or overlooked. Coaches demand loyalty from their players. They expect public support even when private disagreements exist, and they view challenges to their authority as threats to the entire team structure. If Stefanski lets this slide without consequences, he risks losing the locker room and emboldening other players to publicly question his decisions. He looks weak, controlled by his players, and not in command of his own team. It puts him in an impossible position. But if he comes down hard on Sanders, benches him even further, or tries to discipline him, he's going to face an absolute firestorm from fans, media, and potentially even ownership who are desperate to see what Sanders can do at the quarterback position. Punishing Sanders now while Gabriel continues to fail makes Stefanski look vindictive, petty, and more concerned with his own ego than with winning football games. From Shedeur Sanders' perspective, this Instagram like is a last resort from a player who feels he's been given zero opportunity to compete, zero chance to prove himself, and zero respect despite his obvious talent and potential. He's watched Dillon Gabriel, a player drafted 2 rounds ahead of him, struggle mightily. He's seen the team lose winnable games because of poor quarterback play, and he's been forced to stand on the sidelines, or worse, be inactive on game day, knowing that he could potentially provide a spark, or, at minimum, couldn't possibly be worse than what's currently on the field. The frustration has been building for months, from draft night through training camp and into the regular season, and it finally boiled over in this very public, very deliberate, and very primetime way. And then there's the timing. The Browns are currently on their bye week, which would have been the perfect opportunity for Kevin Stefanski to make a quarterback change if he was so inclined. You get extra time to prepare the new starter. You can install packages specifically designed for his skill set. You can manage the media blowback, and you come out of the bye with renewed energy and a fresh start. Many fans and analysts were hoping and expecting that Stefanski would use this bye week to finally give Shedeur Sanders his shot to see what the organization really has in the 5th round pick, and to potentially salvage something from what has been a disastrous season. But despite another absolutely dreadful performance from Dillon Gabriel against the Patriots, despite the mounting pressure from fans and media, and despite the obvious need for change, Kevin Stefanski came out publicly and confirmed that Gabriel will remain the starting quarterback for the Browns' next game against the Jets. That announcement was like pouring gasoline on an already raging fire. It's a clear signal that Stefanski is either incredibly stubborn, unwilling to admit his evaluation was wrong, or potentially being pressured by other forces within the organization to stick with Gabriel regardless of the results. Whatever the reason, the decision to keep Gabriel as the starter has been met with almost universal criticism and has only intensified the controversy surrounding Shedeur Sanders. This announcement is what likely prompted Sanders to like that post. It was the final straw. It was Stefanski publicly telling Sanders, "I don't care how bad Gabriel plays, and I don't care what you think, you are not getting a shot." And Sanders in response publicly said, "The fans and I disagree." Think about what this means for Sanders going forward. He's now publicly expressed his frustration and desire to play. He's liked a post calling for him to start, which everyone in the organization, from the GM to the owner to the players in the locker room, has undoubtedly seen. The coaching staff knows exactly where his head is at, and there's no walking this back or pretending it didn't happen. He's essentially forced the organization's hand and put them in a position where they have to address this situation one way or another. Either they give him an opportunity and see what he can do, which is what he's angling for, or they continue to bury him on the depth chart, which now looks even worse given his public expression of frustration. If they keep him on the bench, it looks personal. It looks like a punishment, not a football decision. The optics of this entire situation are absolutely terrible for the Cleveland Browns organization from top to bottom. You have a highly touted quarterback prospect who fell in the draft, who has been given zero opportunity to compete or prove himself, who is watching inferior quarterback play cost the team games, and who has now publicly expressed his frustration with the situation. That's not a good look for player development. It's not a good look for organizational decision making. And it's certainly not a good look for a coaching staff that's supposed to be putting the team in the best position to win football games. From a pure football standpoint, there's absolutely no downside to giving Shedeur Sanders an opportunity at this point in the season. The Browns are 2-6, their playoff hopes are essentially non-existent. And continuing to trot out Dillon Gabriel for another disastrous performance isn't going to change the trajectory of the season. It's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. If you play Sanders and he struggles, well, you're already losing games with Gabriel, so nothing really changes. You've at least gathered information. But if you play Sanders and he shows flashes of competence, if he demonstrates that he can manage the game and avoid the catastrophic mistakes that Gabriel has been making, then suddenly you found something valuable for the future, and you can build around him going into next season. The potential upside is massive, and the downside is non-existent. The stubbornness of Kevin Stefanski in this situation is absolutely baffling to anyone watching from the outside. The argument for starting Gabriel over Sanders in the first place was thin, to say the least. Gabriel was a third-round pick, Sanders a fifth. Okay, so the organization invested slightly higher draft capital in Gabriel, but both are rookies, both are unproven. The idea that Gabriel won the job in training camp is hard to believe, given that Sanders was buried at fourth string from day one, suggesting a fair competition was never even on the table. It seems Stefanski and the front office anointed Gabriel from the start, and now they are refusing to admit their mistake. None of that matters if you're losing games and the quarterback play is actively hurting the team. At some point, you have to set aside your ego, admit that your initial assessment may have been wrong, and make the change that gives your team the best chance to be competitive. Stefanski's refusal to even consider giving Sanders a shot, even as the season circles the drain, reeks of stubbornness, pride, and potentially organizational politics that have nothing to do with what's best for the team on the field. He is tying his own reputation to the success of Dillon Gabriel, and both of them are sinking together. The fan reaction to Shedeur Sanders liking that Instagram post has been overwhelmingly supportive of the young quarterback. Browns fans are desperate for any kind of hope, any reason to believe that things can turn around, and any sign that the organization is willing to make bold decisions to improve the team. Sanders publicly campaigning for the starting job, even if it breaks traditional protocol, is being viewed by many fans as a breath of fresh air. They see a player who believes in himself, who wants to compete, and who is frustrated by a coaching staff that seems content to accept mediocrity rather than take a chance on potential. The "he's being disrespectful" crowd is a tiny minority compared to the "let him play" crowd. The media coverage has been equally fascinating, with analysts and commentators split on whether Sanders' Instagram activity was appropriate or crosses a line. Some argue that players should never publicly undermine coaching decisions, and that Sanders needs to handle his frustration through proper channels within the organization. They argue it's unprofessional, immature, and detrimental to the team. Others, and I find myself in this camp, contend that Sanders has been given no voice within the organization, that the proper channels have clearly failed him, and that his public expression of frustration is understandable given the circumstances. What proper channel is there? He was the fourth stringer. He was a healthy scratch with a back injury. The head coach just publicly recommitted to the failing starter during the bye week. It's clear the door has been slammed in his face. What is he supposed to do? Sit there and smile while his career, which already took a massive hit on draft night, withers away on the bench? He's a competitor. He's fighting for his professional life. Regardless of which side you fall on, everyone agrees that this situation cannot continue as is. Something has to give, whether that's a quarterback change, a coaching change, or potentially even a trade of Sanders to another organization that would actually value his talents. The trade deadline is approaching, and you have to wonder if this public move was also a signal to the rest of the league. I'm healthy, I'm ready, and I want out. The comparison to other quarterback controversies throughout NFL history is inevitable. We've seen situations where backup quarterbacks publicly campaigned for starting jobs, where relationships between coaches and players broke down, and where social media became the battleground for internal organizational disputes. Some of those situations ended with the backup getting his chance and vindicating his frustration. Others ended with the player being traded or released and the organization doubling down on their original decision, often to their own detriment. The question now is which path the Browns will choose and whether they're willing to admit that their handling of Shedeur Sanders has been misguided from the start. Looking ahead to the game against the New York Jets following the bye week, all eyes will be on who takes the first snap at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Kevin Stefanski has publicly committed to Dillon Gabriel remaining the starter, but public commitments from coaches have been walked back before when circumstances change, especially when pressure from ownership or the GM becomes too intense. If Gabriel has another disastrous performance against the Jets, if he throws a pick six in the first quarter, if the stadium erupts in Shedeur chants, if the Browns lose another winnable game because of poor quarterback play, Stefanski may be forced to make the change, regardless of his previous statements. He may not survive the season if he doesn't. For Shedeur Sanders, this is a defining moment in his young career. He's taken the bold step of publicly expressing his frustration and desire to play. He's burned bridges with the coaching staff by liking that Instagram post. He's essentially gone all in on forcing a change to happen. Now he has to be ready if and when his opportunity finally arrives. If he gets his shot and struggles, the criticism will be intense. The narrative will shift to, see, the coaches were right. He's just a loudmouth fifth rounder who wasn't ready. But if he gets his shot and performs well, if he shows that he can manage the game and be competitive, then he'll be vindicated, and the organization will look foolish for waiting so long to give him an opportunity. The father-son dynamic adds another fascinating and potentially explosive layer to this story. Deion Sanders, one of the most iconic and outspoken personalities in football history, has to be watching this situation unfold with a mix of pride in his son's competitiveness and absolute fury at how the organization has handled him. Deion is not someone who stays quiet when he feels his family has been disrespected, and while he's been relatively measured in his public comments about Shedeur's NFL situation so far, you have to wonder if and when he might weigh in more forcefully. If Deion Sanders goes on a podcast or on his own social media and starts publicly criticizing the Browns organization, Kevin Stefanski, and the front office for how they've handled Shedeur, that adds another entire dimension to this controversy. It puts even more pressure on the team to make a change, and turns this from a local sports story into a national headline. The broader implications for the Browns organization are significant. Beyond just this season, how they handle this situation with Shedeur Sanders will send a message to future draft picks, free agents, and players throughout the league about what kind of organization Cleveland is and how they treat their players. If they continue to bury Sanders despite his obvious talent and the clear need for a change at quarterback, it tells the football world that the Browns make decisions based on pride and stubbornness rather than merit and performance. It says that they'd rather lose with their guy than win with a guy they didn't want. That's not an attractive destination for players who have options about where they want to play. Let's be perfectly clear, the relationship between Shedeur Sanders and Kevin Stefanski is broken, possibly beyond repair. The Instagram like was the public acknowledgement of a private frustration that had been building for months. The coaching staff's continued commitment to Dillon Gabriel, despite his poor performance, is gasoline on the fire, and the entire situation is playing out in public, on social media, and in the court of fan opinion, where the Browns are losing badly. Something has to change, someone has to blink, and the next few weeks will determine whether Shedeur Sanders gets his opportunity to prove he belongs, or whether this nightmare that started on draft night continues to spiral further out of control. The Cleveland Browns are at a crossroads with their quarterback situation. Their coaching staff's credibility is on the line, and Shedeur Sanders has made it clear that he's done waiting patiently for an opportunity that may never come through traditional channels. This is drama of the highest order, and it's only going to intensify as we move forward. The Jets game will be must-watch television, not just for the game itself, but for the ongoing quarterback controversy that has completely consumed this organization. If you found this deep dive into the Shedeur Sanders situation compelling, if you appreciate the analysis and breakdown of how this relationship has completely fractured, then smash that like button right now. Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Do you think Shedeur Sanders was right to publicly like that Instagram post? Or was it unprofessional? Should Kevin Stefanski finally give him a chance to start against the Jets? And do you see any path forward for these two to repair their relationship, or is this situation broken beyond repair? I want to hear from all of you, so get in that comment section and let's discuss. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another breaking story, another piece of insider analysis, or another moment of drama from around the NFL. This is the kind of in-depth coverage and real talk that you won't find anywhere else, and I'm bringing it to you consistently. The Cleveland Browns quarterback controversy is far from over, and I'll be here to break down every development as it happens. Until next time.